talking about different districts and different things going on within the city. So, what are we going on about today, lads?
Well, I think the idea today is to talk about some of the sort of businesses and industries that would exist in a steampunk city that wouldn't have existed in a Victorian city.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. That sounds like a good, interesting subject. Who would like to start?
You may as well go take it yourself.
Okay, no problem. I've been thinking about this now. My idea came from an anime that I've been watching recently called Drifting Dragons on Netflix, which is an anime about an airship that goes around. Literally, it's a lot like the whale hunting ships of the Victorian times, except for instead of hunting whales, these airships hunt dragons, and they use them for basically the skin's used for manufacturing. The oil is obviously used for fuel and lighting. Obviously the meat is used for food. Basically, within like one dragon, they get basically a whole city's worth of supplies. Even the bones are used for art, apparently. So, I mean, like having that would be massive within like the steampunk world, you know, because obviously everything would be like Tilly lamps and all stuff like that. So it'd all be gas powered, it'd all be oil powered. So having a massive creature which you could basically harvest for all these devices would be like the perfect situation really for the steampunk world.
The other thing to jump in on there when you say about airships hunting dragons, of course, the other idea sort of from films like that is the lightning pirates, like in is it Stardust?
Yes,
film. Yeah.
That's a good point.
Where they go around harvesting lightning.
Yeah, that could be a solution to the electricity problem.
Yeah. So there's there's other things like that. If you've got airships, are there things in the sky they can be harvesting?
Well, yeah, I mean that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, like you said, if the world is kind of run essentially by airships, you know, like our world has kind of been run by ships for years, hasn't it? You know, like cargo ships and stuff like that. It's how we've got, you know, before we had air travel, and even now, it's how we get most of the stuff around the world.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a case. I guess it's a case of how would the Victorian era, in that case, have been different if trade was based on airships rather than ships and trains.
Well, yeah, it would have made it a really different world, and like actually, if you give me 1 second, I can use a perfect example. I've got down the back here. So, this comic book series, Skies of Fire, goes a lot into like the different designs of airships that would basically be used within the steampunk world, and they do have somewhere, I've got to remember which one it's in, a poster of the different airships they have in the world, like cargo airships and battle airships and stuff like that. It's very interesting stuff. It should be in one of these. I think it's in the back of this one.
I think the thing is as well is if you had airships, would you have airships going to every city, or would you have still have like port cities, but not necessarily by the sea?
Sorry, I didn't catch that last bit. Or the cap. Say again.
Would you have airships going to every city in a steampunk world, or would there still be like port cities that are like maybe in like mountainous regions, so the airships don't have to come down as low?
I'd expect on the edges of countries, like on the edges of all the big oceans, or anywhere like that, unless you're going to have floating helium/hydrogen gas stations, like to fuel up, you're going to need to keep some sort of like the docks pretty much as they are now, so that at the earliest possible opportunity, an airship comes in and can straight away fuel up and then get away.
It's whether those sort of other locations might prove to be better. So say, instead of, say, a port being where there's a natural harbour, it's an area where there's cliffs, because the airship can come in at the top of the cliff without having to, like, put down.
I'm just, in my mind now, I'm picturing the white cliffs of Dover with airships, like, parking up right on top of them.
That's the kind of thing I'm imagining, yeah.
Well, that's the thing.
You could even have sort of like gantries built out for the airships to moor against.
That's pretty.
Yeah,
that'd be pretty cool.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, like, especially within the world and that. I mean, if you have an area with like high lightning storms, if you have a port city, you know, there's high lightning storms of that, you're not going to be able to get a lot of airships in there. You're going to have minimal time when your airship can travel, whereas ships, you know, can travel a bit easier if there's a lightning storm. So yeah, it's like we said the other week with the communications, you know, having multiple veins that you could use. So, like, steam engines will still be there, you know, airships will still be there, and stuff like that. Having multiple different forms of transportation is important.
The other thing is would there still be some cargoes that would be too bulky or too heavy for transport by airship?
Oh yeah, stuff like steam generators and stuff like that.
That would have to still go by sea.
Yeah, the only time you'd basically you'd have to move those by air is if you had a city that was in a mountainous or ravinous sort of area and you couldn't get to it any other way. But yeah, anyway, that was my idea. What about you two? Have you got any thoughts about industry?
I've got a couple of examples. As a few people might be aware, I am in the process of building a steampunk city diorama. Now, this is kind of on hold at the moment because I've decided to start building a steampunk version of the Ghostbusters Proton Pack instead. But, yeah. So, this is one that is actually finished. So, this is a business that I came up with, and of course this is mirrored, isn't it? So you can't actually read the sign.
No, it's all right.
Or is it not mirrored to you?
No, Theodore Day and Sons Limited. We got it.
Mechanic and galvanic.
I can read it all out if you like.
That sounds good.
It says Theodore Day and Sons Limited, mechanical and galvanic engineering, computation and difference engine construction, repair and upgrades, laboratory instruments, mechanical and galvanic devices built to specification, all types of phonographic and telegraphic equipment supplied and serviced, most common device types held in stock for demonstration and immediate delivery.
Nice.
Not bad.
So that is like essentially that is a Victorian version of your sort of your likes of sort of Curry's or PC World.
Where
so that sounds like a good idea.
Theodore
Day.
Day.
Sort of gadgets and things like that. Then I also have this one, which is the Flatiron building that I've sort of made. Now this one doesn't have any signs on it yet, but if you ever look at photos of sort of of Victorian cities, you get all these sort of offices for things like big insurance companies, for like marine insurance and that kind of thing. But I'm thinking in a steampunk world, you could have things like Martian insurance, because people are going to want insurance for their damage in case the Martians come and invade again.
Yeah, tripod wipes out your house. Yeah, you're gonna need to be able to claim.
You've got to have a Ghostbusters office in there.
Specifying in interstellar travel.
Ooh. Yeah, having a Ghostbusters office in there as well would be a good idea. Yeah, it's just so we got that as well. Another thing that I think would be massive in the steampunk world would be gear makers. So gear makers would be like really essential workers. I mean, a few years ago, in fact, was supposed to be a couple of weeks ago, was supposed to be at an event in Upton, which unfortunately, due to the state of the world, has been cancelled.
Is this the Horological Institute one?
Yeah. And I got to For those of you that haven't been to Upton, British Horological Institute is all about like the history of clocks, which it's a fascinating place. It's not open many times of the year, but if you ever get a chance to go, go. And what the open day that we was there, they actually had a guy there working one of the machines, and he let you make a clock gear. And the only way I could describe the machine is it was like it was a small cutting disc. It was only about that big. And you'd pull it down, and underneath there'd be like a record disc with loads of holes in it. And basically you'd have to move it one at a time, basically to get the right distance between the gears. And it was telling us that the cutting head was about £400, and it only came in a full set, which cost about £8,000. And I'm just thinking, you've just let me pay £2.50 to play with this. What are you doing?
Oh, wait, so is it that they cut them one tooth at a time?
Yep.
They're not just done on sort of like a fly press or something.
More than likely, in a big industry, they would be done in a fly press. But this machine was just like, it must have been for precision work. It must have been for like, you know, a small bespoke clockmaker.
I always assumed that you just have like a thickish sheet of sheet brass and a sort of die set, and then just stick it in a fly press and stamp these gears out in the hundreds.
Probably did towards the back end, but I'd imagine when when technology's in its infancy, so at the beginning of the Victorian period, potentially. I mean, this is something to look into. Is like this method. When did it come and go? But I'd imagine it sounds to me more like either for, like Rodney said, uber precise work, or if they at the start when the technologies weren't there for mass production.
It's most probably for the small businesses, you know, that are making clocks, you know, that cost like thousands, you know, and they're only making like 5 or 6 a month. So they're just there, make everything by hand, because, you know, some of the rich people out there, they eat up that stuff, don't they? If they went, oh, this is all handcrafted, even down to the gears.
These are the ones that I'm frightened that I'm going to end up pulling one apart for bits at some point.
It's a worry that every steampunk has.
Because I generally buy clock mechanisms from the car boot for about £2 to £2.50 each and tear them apart. And the vast majority of them are those sort of like 1930s to 1950s Smith's clocks.
Yeah, I got given some of the 1980s ones. You know, the ones that have like that 4 ball weight on the underneath that spins
West
around.
German dome clocks.
Yeah.
They're brilliant.
Yeah,
if you can get them with the domes as well, they're fantastic because you get a clock mechanism and a glass dome.
Yeah, unfortunately none of mine came with the dome, but they're still brilliant for what I need.
Yeah. I've got some of the, you know, the 4 little weights off those. I keep thinking whether I can make like a miniature version of one of your little governors out of one of those.
That'd be pretty cool. Alright.
Anyway,
we're getting off track again.
Again.
Richard, have you got anything you'd like to share today?
Well, I'm thinking, so going back to the War of the Worlds type scenario, or whether it be the Martian tripods, or whether it be Skycrakens, anything. If we think about what the Victorians accomplished, they would take a material, push it to the limit a lot of the time, pass the limits, but that's the bit that most people tend to forget. But find out where the limits of the material is and do the best you can with that material. So I'm thinking, if we're living in a world where it's post-War of the Worlds, we've got tripods everywhere, material, like all sorts of weird, wonderful materials. In my mind, the industries that are going to spring up are going to be the equivalent of steelworks, etc., etc. But taking these materials that are recovered from Mars, like expeditions to Mars or other planets, and pushing them to their full potential. So potentially, the impact of that being a brand new landscape, like different, perhaps buildings which are several times easier to make. Maybe it's like transport, which have airships which have much lighter frames there, or could be much bigger, etc., powered by some new, cool, interesting way. It's going to be mass production, mass industry, taking recovered technologies, not scavenging them, but implementing processes to turn them into X, Y, Z.
Yeah, you could essentially you're saying that you could have, say, something like, you take your steam boiler, but instead of fueling it with coal, you're fueling it using like a reverse engineered from like a Martian death ray.
Yeah, I'd say modern day equivalent is graphene. Like new material, relative was a few years ago they were really raving about it. I think on the hype cycle it's a bit further along, but it was like so many applications, and now we're at the point where what can we do with it? How can we use it? Similar sort of thing to that. It's get a material and say, right, great, what can I do with this? And to be honest, that's what humans have been doing throughout the entire of history. You get something, it's like, ooh, can I do something cool with that? Da-da-da-da-da. Yes, I can. Take it to the next level. It's like that sort of. So the TV adaptation though with War of the Worlds that the BBC did, it was a few months ago now, which the ending we're not going to talk about. We're not but just look at the world. Just look at put the story away, but look at the world that was left behind. Obviously, you had people scavenging through the ruins of the world that was. I don't see that. There may be a period of that, but I see rapidly getting past that is moving to industrialising what's been left behind.
I think the thing is that the BBC that they steered so far away from the original story.
Yeah.
And with what they did with that they were I think somebody decided they wanted like a post-apocalyptic world at the end, and then they rewrote the story to fit that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Post-apocalyptic is really big at the moment. I mean, you just got to look at Netflix and near it. There are a lot of post-apocalyptic programs coming out on shows on sites like Netflix and that. I mean, like The Walking Dead has been big for years, hasn't it? Is that finished?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Has The Walking Dead finished?
I don't know. I gave up it whatever season it was, where they seemed to just be wandering around the prison every episode.
Yeah, right. Fair enough.
Yeah, I don't know if it's finished or not.
But yeah, but it's just so that's basically the BBC are trying to find a way to get into it.
Well, like I said, I just want to focus on the world, the story, the rest of it. Let's put that to one side, but let's focus on.
Fair enough.
Yeah. It's like
No, all I'm saying is that if you go with the world sort of from the original H.G. Wells story. You are more left with at a point where the red weed has died back.
Yeah.
They've sort of ploughed it into the ground. They can start growing crops again, and it is sort of trying to get back to normal rather than going into this what the BBC did.
Yeah, and it's just a case of once we're back to normal, it's like, oh, you've also left behind all this cool tech. Thanks very much. Let's turn that into something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or we could go down the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen line where, we find out that it wasn't the common cold that killed it, it was smallpox. Yeah, so I don't know if you know, but the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen comics, which are extremely different from the film. Like, I can see why the fans were upset with the film. But the comics, they basically fire smallpox at the Martians and use that to kill them. And they're just like, oh, in history we'll just say it's the common cold that killed them.
Actual biological weapons.
Oh yeah, it's very.
Well, I mean, the other thing, of course, is that you can go if you have sort of a world with time travel, you could go down the Futurama explanation of it. It was the humblest of God's creatures, the Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Oh, I miss Futurama. I like The Simpsons, but the fact that that's got 30 series and Futurama's only got 8, really annoying.
Yeah, but
anyway,
yeah, sorry.
So back to what we was going on about.
back on topic again, yeah.
So yeah, you've just mentioned yours. What have you got any more to add to that, Richard?
Other than I'm just thinking, like, if we're talking in a steampunk world where, like, things are powered by, say, like ether nano, or like that sort of like fantastical. So I think the big mass production will be, well, for starters, we've talked a lot about airships and dirigibles, etc. earlier on. So there's going to need to be a monumental amount of helium and hydrogen production. I was watching a podcast earlier in the week, and they were saying I can't remember the name of the ship, but one of the world's first helium airships. So used helium to make it lift. When it flew, it contained almost the entire world supply of helium in it. That's how difficult it was to make helium. Like, almost all of the helium in the world was in this one airship.
I think this is the thing. This is what people forget when it was sort of, why did they use hydrogen airships when everybody knew that it was explosive? It's because hydrogen is incredibly easy to make.
In comparison to storing it, that's the nightmare, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, hydrogen is essentially it's an electrolysis process of water.
Mm.
If you've got something that can kick out a decent amount of electricity, which they had, it's relatively easy to produce.
Well, it's Peter Shripol, a YouTuber, actually made a hydrogen-powered Nerf gun. And I tell you what, it's powerful.
Well,
it's really clever.
I assume he had to replace most of the plastic with metal.
Funnily enough, no. No, I'll send you the link after this, and you can have a look at it.
We'll put that link up on the page afterwards, because
I think people are interested in it.
People want to see that one.
But
he also attempted to make a steampunk Nerf gun, which he completely made out of wood and brass, and used an ignition coil from a truck to heat the water to create steam. And unfortunately, it didn't work, so he ended up having to hold a blowtorch underneath it to get enough power to fire it. That one was a bit of a failure.
This is the interesting thing, because I have had a similar idea, because as well as like the couple of little model steam engines I acquired for my computer, I did also acquire a soldered copper boiler. That's sort of so big. And the thought did occur to me whether it would be possible to do something like that.
I'll send you all the links.
Yeah, it probably comes under the same category as Tesla coils and other things that involve messing with high voltage that I probably shouldn't do.
Well, interesting point though. Like, we're talking about, most people these days say, why was hydrogen so freely used when helium wasn't? Obviously, you mentioned that's also much more difficult to make, but also, as I was saying, we were talking earlier on, pushing technology to the limit. They didn't know what the limit of hydrogen was at this point. And like anyone that's been in a chemistry lesson these days knows that hydrogen plus a flame makes a big bang. But back in those days, no one knew. It was just like, I'd imagine it's.
They knew it was flammable, but I think there was a general opinion that a hydrogen fire would be self-extinguishing because it would create water. Yeah.
That's public perception and things like that, isn't it? I wonder if that's the advertising, the madmen of the Victorian age thinking, right, we need to think of a way to make this look safe.
Make this sound safe, yeah. I do wonder if it possibly was.
Maybe.
It's like film. So, like, just movie film.
Oh,
cellulose. Dangerous.
Yeah, you weren't allowed to take it on public transport.
No. Well, they like in cinemas, they had like these separate. They had a rewinding room that was separate to everything else, which is usually why a lot of the cinemas had towers, because that was put in one of the towers. So then, when they were rewinding the film, which is when, I think because they did it at a higher speed to the projector, it was more likely to catch fire. It was away from the rest of the cinema. Which is why a lot of very early cinemas, you'll see, I mean, the prime example is Abbeydale Picture House in Sheffield, which is one of the first like purpose-built cinemas in the country, and it's sort of this white tile structure, and right at the front is a tower, and the purpose of that tower was to have the rewinding room in, and it was purely so they could make that as far away from the cinema as possible.
Seems a bit mad though. It's like, again, going off topic a little bit, but put it in a tower. So, because if that does go up, it's going to rain fire on the rest of the building.
Again, I suspect it was sort of one of these sort of, we'll make it sound safe.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's far removed. It's out of the way. I think the other idea would be that because they'd have, like, say, a concrete floor in it, they could sort of shut the door, let it burn itself out virtually without the rest of the building burning down.
Okay, that makes sense.
Like why they put the kitchens separate on a lot of big country houses.
Yeah, but here's the thing. You know, I can see what happened now. I mean, like, especially if it was still like that these days. You know, the door would be left open while it's rewinding. That down the stairs there'd be, you know, leftover boxes of stock for all the sweets and that, and then it would just be like then if it went up, it would just be like a towering inferno.
Oh, the health and safety executive didn't exist in those days, neither did automatic door closers.
Neither did health and safety.
Automatic door closers actually did.
Oh, did they?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They had they used them a lot in cotton mills because they knew that cotton fibres in the air was extremely flammable to potentially even being explosive.
Oh, I stand corrected. That's cool.
So it wasn't as we'd see them now. It was what they had sliding doors with like a chain and a weight. So you'd pull the door open against a weight and it would close by itself. So the self-closing doors they did have.
All right. That's interesting. So they had health and safety equipment. They just didn't care.
Yeah, I mean they were well. It wasn't so much that. It was health and safety, things like that. It wasn't health and safety. It was seen as a mill owner protecting their property by stopping a fire from spreading. They didn't care about the workers. But what they didn't want was they didn't want to burn down their extremely expensive cotton mill.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
It's like the same reason that when they first started putting sprinklers in things. It wasn't to protect people; it was to protect the buildings.
It's like some Russian tanks as well. They've got a fire suppression system that will guarantee to take the fire out. Like some of the older ones. I assume they've fixed this by now. But a fire suppression system. If there's a fire in a tank, it will kill the fire and any humans that happen to be in there that aren't like wearing a respirator.
What was that? Halon gas.
Can't remember if it's Halon, exactly which one it is, but all I know is the tank will be fine. A few scorch marks.
That's pretty much the attitude to health and safety they had. So I say these things were developed. It's the same reason they put like brick arched vaults into mills. It was purely because if they had a fire, they didn't want the mill burning down.
Yeah.
Ah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Wonder if I've done too many of them then. If you're only allowed so many.
What's occurring?
A message just came up.
Yeah, saying that we had an unlimited length of time. I thought we'd be limited to 40 minutes because I was on Wednesday with the pub meet.
Okay.
Okay, that's interesting. Maybe they put it back on. So we got a bit longer.
Or I wonder if there's only if sort of it's a trial thing and each person, each user's only gets so many.
Maybe.
And because I've already done like 2 or 3 of those pub meets, I've used my allocation of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got any questions on the group?
I don't think so. I'm just having a quick look.
I don't think there's actually anyone keeping on it at the moment.
There we go. No, I don't think we have got any. No.
That's all right.
No questions or comments?
No, I mean, continuing on from what I was saying, I think the thing is that one thing that the Victorians' sort of very lax attitude to health and safety would have allowed is it would have allowed, say, for things like personal jetpacks, which now the technology's there, but it's just a regulatory nightmare, so nobody can have them.
That's a very interesting point. So, a couple of years ago, Diane, my fiance, she bought me for a Christmas present the autobiography of Brunel, and it talks about obviously.
Is this the LTC Rolt one?
I think it. I've got it over there somewhere. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that's the one I've read as well. Yes.
Yeah, it's a really, really, really good book.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
And to be honest, the accounts of like Brunel's father, Mark Brunel, yeah, that could make a decent Hollywood film because it's got everything. It's got adventure, a love story. Seriously, if they made that, that'd be awesome. It'd be awesome.
Oh yeah.
Because it's an epic read. But like Brunel was absolutely. He would hate the modern world, purely from the point of view of he didn't like regulation. He didn't like oversight. He was like, well, I'm an engineer. Of course, I'm going to build my stuff to a high standard. Why do you need to come and investigate it? And this is kind of the world that we're in at the moment. Like, if we're talking about business and industry, a lot of cases, regulation is almost stifling creativity because it's like the number of hoops you have to jump through to be able to get something off the ground. It's like, have you filled this bit of paper? Have you filled that? Blah, blah, blah. And I think the only way that where you see that fall down is with new technologies come along. So drones is a very good example of that.
Yes.
Where drones came out, anyone could buy one, and it's the Wild West. Like all sorts of stuff's kicking off. Like people using them for nefarious purposes in Gatwick and places like that. But it's
well, I mean, before that, the main nefarious purpose people were using them for was delivering drugs into prisons.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So it's the Wild West. Like new technologies come along, and then it's absolute madness. People using it for all sorts of different purposes until regulation catches up.
Well, going on about drones quickly, there was a company that has actually made a manned drone. Sounds stupid. They've made
That's not a drone.
I know. It sounds stupid, but basically they've made a gyrocopter that you can control for racing.
It's a quadricopter.
So does the person in it control it, or does someone else control it?
No, the person in it controls it. It's not like Futurama. It's not like Futurama where they're in there for weight.
Like poor terrified bystander in it.
That's a quadricopter, isn't it?
Controlling it from your phone.
But the thing is that the company's in Germany, and they couldn't test it in Germany. The only country that gave them permission to test it was Croatia.
Right.
Yeah. It proves the point though, because Germany, they have a lot of rules, a lot of regulations, so guaranteed they're not gonna.
The only problem is that all these rules and regulations have come because people have died. People have been maimed, injured.
This is the thing. It's like
all I'm saying is that. It's a bit like when people say, you know, if tobacco had been discovered now, it would have been made illegal.
Oh yeah, same with alcohol.
Yeah, if they had made jetpacks in the Victorian era, we would have jetpacks today.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they'd be regulated. They'd just be like.
We would have jetpacks today. Whereas now we have the technology to build a jetpack, but it'll never get off the ground because it's a regulatory nightmare.
All it is now is basically a gimmick, isn't it? Because there's a company that's using them. There's a couple of companies that use them in the world, and it's just used for basically pleasure flights, isn't it?
But yeah, I mean, there's the ones in Dubai where it's like a water pump one, which I wouldn't really say is a jetpack. But there is that one. I think it was on Colin Firth's channel. He had where it's like two little tiny jets mounted on your arms and then something on your back. It's a bit like the Iron Man suit, to be honest.
Gravity, I think it's called.
Yeah, it's a bit like the Iron Man suit. suit, as I say.
Yeah, but
yeah, it's like it's a larger version essentially, isn't it?
Yeah, but also when we're talking about rules and regulation getting in the way, of course we have to ask the question: why are there rules and regulations getting in the way? The answer is because things have got wrong. Not everyone has the same pride in their work, that conscionable caring about the people have built stuff with poor quality, and we've seen the results of that. It's...
Now I'm just going to go and grab a book a minute, assuming I can find it.
Yeah,
I see a lot of clocks in the back there. I don't see many books.
The books are stored off to the side.
Oh, right, okay.
I can't actually spot the one I want anyway. No. Oh, wait a minute, there we go. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I've got that book. It's a great book.
Oh, right, I haven't heard of that one. I'll have to have a look at that.
Basically, it's a book of mainly engineering things that the Victorians got wrong.
Yeah.
And things that failed.
Yeah.
So some of them are well-known disasters, but a lot of it is sort of less well-known instances of major Victorian projects, and some of it's just fundamental design flaws, like in how they set houses up and that, that caused massive issues.
But other parts of it are like, we're talking about pushing materials to the limit. How do you find the limits of a material? Unfortunately, you have to go past them.
Exactly. I mean, nowadays that's done in laboratories through stress testing, but then it was done by building things.
Yeah.
It's
I
like,
mean, that is also why. I mean, it's the reason that there's so much Victorian infrastructure around today is because the materials hadn't been tested. A lot of stuff was incredibly over-designed.
I mean, you've just got to look at the bridges. I mean, like the bridge in America, I forget the name of it, they built this bridge perfectly fine. Then they realised that if the wind was going at a certain speed, it made the bridge
Bow and
tip.
arrows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's still a sign on one of the bridges in London that say that when they used to have soldiers marching across it, and they said that when the soldiers go across, they have to go out of time, so that basically it doesn't go.
Except, of course, that they do still get it wrong every so often because of the Millennium Bridge.
Yeah, that was a perfect example. The Millennium Bridge was a terrible design, and it cost them millions to get it right.
Yeah, I mean, I actually know the people who sorted the Millennium Bridge. It was University of Sheffield actually fixed it in the end. Put these massive dampers on underneath to stop it swaying.
Yeah, I watched a documentary about it on YouTube actually, and it's just that is just what happens every now and again. I mean, like there was a shopping centre in China that had like free hanging balconies, walkways, sorry. And they hadn't used the right poles. And basically they sheared and just collapsed on top of each other.
The other thing to bear in mind is the Victorians did do this as well. That there was instances where there would be a well-documented failure, and then you'd see that things built after that date became a lot more conservative. So the prime example is the Tay Bridge disaster. So Tay Bridge disaster, up until then, all of the bridges were these long-span, lightweight sort of lattice trusses. Tay Bridge came down. Next major bridge that went up was the fourth bridge, built to a completely different design.
Also, I mean, I suppose a perfect example of basically getting it wrong. It's not Victorian, but it's not far off. The Titanic. The Titanic was just like a perfect example of, it'll be all right. That is because they thought it's unsinkable. There's no way this can sink. Why would I spend enough money to get life rafts for everyone?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was just. It was basically, you know, the guys in charge puffing up the chest, and they were basically like, "There's no chance it could sink. We've designed it to be,
Well,
unsinkable."
It was believed it was unsinkable because there was a couple of things it had. It had this double-walled hull,
Yeah.
which that used on a lot of Victorian ships, and then it also had these watertight bulkheads. And I know that the thing that they say about the Titanic is if they'd have hit the iceberg head on, it wouldn't have sunk. It's because they steered to avoid it, scraped all the way down the side, and penetrated too many of the compartments.
Yeah. You know what? Also,
It was a
ironic.
disaster that nobody predicted, because everybody predicted if it was to hit anything, a rock, an iceberg, whatever, it would be a head-on collision.
So, you know what's also a bit ironic? Somebody's making one right now. There's Titanic 2 being made.
To be fair, if it's built to modern standards with the correct number of lifeboats, there's probably no issue.
I know, but I wouldn't want to be on the maiden voyage. I'll give it a couple of goes first before I go
Depends
on.
where it's going.
Same
It's
route.
not going anywhere near any ice.
Same route.
So no, it's
Right.
not due to global warming. No, it's not going anywhere near any ice, so it's fine.
That's true.
Fair point, yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, if it's just sort of going round the med or something, it's fine.
Now, apparently it's doing the same route.
Right, okay.
I'd hate to know how much that's going to cost if it's doing the same route.
Well, I would also imagine that sort of by modern sort of cruise standards, it's going to be quite boring.
Shuffleboards.
Well, it'll be. I bet you it'll be like. Essentially, I suppose it'll be like Steampunk Festival. There'll be a lot of themed stuff on it. You'll most probably see a lot of steampunks going on it, and a lot of reenactors going on it. It'll be for them.
Well, it depends. Yeah.
No, I'm more just thinking that you think about a cruise. They generally go, and they're calling in at places all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Whereas that is just an ocean crossing. It's a long ocean crossing.
Yeah, how long is that going to take?
Will take weeks.
Yeah, I'll miss that one.
Plus, also flying the ointment. There's things happening in the world at the moment which might make that going from country to country a little bit more challenging.
Well, they can go
Yeah,
all the way over there, not actually dock, and then just turn around and come back.
And then go into quarantine for 2 weeks.
Well, technically, if it takes a week there and a week back, you've been in quarantine.
No, well, the world will get better.
Yeah, of course it will.
Maybe that's the solution. We go back to long sea voyages, and then that covers the quarantine period.
Maybe.
Well, just have no one leave their cabins. Just have one guy go around chucking meals underneath the door. Oh yeah, that would do you.
Now, all you do is you put instead of having roofs to the cabin, have a wire mesh so that crew can just chuck food down to the people below. At least in third class.
I have a fat chef walking around with a pan.
Yeah,
It's
well,
like a ladle and get out there, yeah. We've gone off.
Massively off topic.
If it ever gets to the stage where we ever get a chance to do merch in that, one of our merchers should be a T-shirt that just said "We went off topic again, didn't we?"
I think it might be good as like a cloth patch or a badge.
Yeah, yeah, like patches and that.
Yeah.
Oh, if only we know someone who could do that. Yeah. All right. We're coming up to about how far are we on the stream?
about 50,
We're about 50 minutes in.
yeah.
Have we got anything else we want to? Well, about 40 minutes in accordance to mine.
No,
But,
we actually started at 4, did we?
No, someone didn't pay attention.
Oh, that's alright.
Yeah.
No, not you.
I was going to say I didn't pay attention to the dates.
Yeah, if anyone is watching, yeah, we kind of messed up the days a bit. I know I said this last time, but
I cannot get on with calendars that start the week on a Sunday.
Oh, that's stupid. Yeah, my old work was like that. They went from like Sunday to Saturday. That was like.
Well, my work's even more stupid. Our timesheets go Saturday to Saturday.
Stupid, isn't it? Well, like I was saying last week, for anyone who does watch us back and that, we will get better at this. We're still extremely new to this sort of thing.
Yeah, it will get better.
Do we want to have a bit of a chat about other possible topics?
Well, yeah. Well, I would like to focus one time on entertainment within like a steampunk city, because there is one thing I want to share. One video that I want to share on that topic, and it's really cool. So that's one subject. Then we can go on about the military side of things.
Defense.
Yeah, defense. You know,
Yeah.
go on about what a military would use to get around. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could do stuff like that. We could. What else could we go on about? I would like to. If we could get someone from the MEF interested, I would like to talk about basically going to Mars.
Yeah.
Like how we'd do it in a steampunk world. I think that'd be a good idea for having a guest on.
We'll have to have a chat to Craig and see if he wants to do it.
Yeah.
Well, either Craig or Rob. I think either of them might be up for it.
Yeah, I reckon they would. So they're my ideas. Anyone else got any other ideas?
I wouldn't mind doing something about the kind of infrastructure they'd have, but the problem is I don't want to sort of, obviously with the industry I work in, I don't want to just sort of take over that.
Well, I don't. We can cover that if you want. We'll have a look at it. Richard, got anything?
Expeditions and things like that. I would like how we do them. So we want to go. So the Martians have come. They've had a crack at Earth. It's not gone well for them. It's time to find out a bit more about them. How do we get there? How do we set up? What does camp look like? How do we move around on Mars? Those sort of questions, really.
That's an interesting idea. What else can we go on about?
I do like the idea of doing something on entertainment.
Yeah.
I think that would be good.
There's an interesting video that is really cool. That's well worth watching. But that is obviously a talk for that day. What else could we go on about?
Well, I'll say
I'm
we take
just
this
looking
off.
around. I'm looking around the workshop.
Tell you what, should we take that offline and then, like you say, we discuss that outside of this?
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I think we should end it there. Yeah. Another thing we need to get better at is ending our streams.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah. So what we'll do, learn that there. Thank you everyone who's been watching. I did see Ian Cameron Mar. I did see you was watching earlier. So I don't know if you're still watching, but if you are, thank you for watching. And so this has been the Fantastical City of Steamtopia. Thank you everyone for watching, and have a wonderful evening.